That's done.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I'm not going to be talking for very long, which is great news for everybody. I just wanted to introduce Zhao, who's going to be talking to us about AI, Copilot, and Educator. So away you go. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Carl. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining, for kind of dedicating a piece of your day to attend this session. As Carl says, I'm João. At Microsoft, I am an industry advisor focused on education. So basically, supposedly, I'm someone that actually understands the challenges of education and at the same time understands the possibilities of technology and should be fairly good at kind of connecting those two things. Okay, so what we are going to do today, so we are not going to have any slides today. I'm going actually to walk you through, and I challenge you, if you have a Copilot license, you just replicate what I will be doing here using Copilot, and then later on Copilot Studio, basically to guide you through one specific objective, but at the same time, hopefully, help you grasp the potential of AI for actually building AI tool. Okay, and that's the key thing, right? Because we have all these capabilities around AI. We are in sight to use them to kind of build stuff to help us do stuff. But at the same time, we can also use AI to build AI tools that then can help, in our case, and in today's case, can help the students, right? So as Carl was saying, it's a war zone, right, out there. Everyone is using AI for everything, right? Students are using AI, as Carl was saying, to study. They're using AI to do homework. They're using AI to basically everything in their day-to-day life. The essential piece that I want to cover now is how different it is for a student to be using, I don't know, a standard commercial application like Gemini or Grok or even Copilot, Chat, or whatever, to study, and using something that actually you as a teacher build. Because there's a difference in between asking a question to a tool that provides an answer. That's one thing. Another thing is asking a question to a teacher, right? Because ideally, the teacher won't provide an answer, right? The teacher will guide the student through the process of learning, actually to get to the answer, right? And that's a very rich and unique thing in the teacher's role, that ability to translate and to uh, create that ability in the students, right? And it's possible to kind of emulate that through AI, right? So one of the core advantages of having this tool, imagine yourself as a teacher, you have an assistant professor. Let's imagine. What does that assistant professor do? That assistant professor basically extends you beyond class, right? Let's imagine a scenario where the student goes to class and the student didn't, for some reason, didn't get the concept that you explained. The class is over. Then the student has other classes, gets back to study at the end of the day, if he does study, at the end of the day, and wants to review that specific concept, can't understand it. Why can't we provide, or why can't you as a teacher provide that student with an AI agent, meaning an autonomous entity that actually behaves as a teacher, behaves as you would behave if you were posed that question, and actually helps the student understand that? What does that guarantee? That guarantees that that student, when it goes to the next class, supposedly he will be at the level at which you expect he will be, so that you can progress teaching other things and going deeper on the concepts and all that. So that's what we are going to be doing. Now, how do we look at, and as you see here, the screen that you see is basically a Copilot Cowork screen, right? I just created a task in Copilot Cowork, and just raise your hand or give me, I don't know, Carl, if it's possible for people to kind of react in this session. I imagine it is. Just give me a thumbs up or something like that if you already use Copilot, or even if you know what Copilot Cowork is. Just give me a thumbs up if you do. Okay, cool. We have one. Okay.
We have lots of thumbs up going on here. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay. Okay. I just see one from Vanya because I have a
Lots of them
small
going.
screen. Okay, cool. So you already know what Copilot is. You already know what Copilot Cowork is, which is a great thing. The most amazing thing about Copilot Cowork is that it allows you to build skills, right? Which is interesting if you think about the concept, right? So the way that I see it and the way that I use it in my day-to-day life is sometimes I need to do something, right? That goes from A to Z. And I know exactly what needs to be done, but I don't have all the skills. For example, Carl was bringing up one skill that is missing, which is actually creating great visually impressive PowerPoint, right? So, but Carl knows all the interesting and the important stuff to actually build that PowerPoint. He just doesn't have that specific skill. And that applies to so many situations, right? In which we are in our day-to-day life, in which maybe we are not as fast delivering, or we need the help from other people, or even we even kind of say, yeah, I can't do this. This is too complicated. I don't have enough skills. What's interesting about Copilot is that, and namely Copilot Cowork, is that allows you to create those skills, right? So what's the process of creating a skill? Right? You can do it two ways, right? You can be direct, saying, yeah, I want you to build me a skill to do A, B, C, D, and F in this sequence, and then the output should be this one. You can do it like that. Or, which I think is richer, you can start with the challenge, right? What do you want to do, right? What's the challenge that you have? And then go through a conversation with Copilot Cowork to kind of narrow that down to the process. And then after the process is really well set up, you say, okay, let's build a skill to do this. And what a skill does effectively, and where skills get powerful, is when we can generalize them, meaning they don't solve one problem. They conceptually solve one problem, but they can solve many different instances of that problem. How does that apply to what we are doing here, which is an assistant professor, is we are going to use Copilot Cowork to create an agent that is a math teacher, 10th grade Portuguese curriculum math teacher. But the same way, instead of saying I'm a 10th grade math teacher in Portugal, you can go and say I'm a 10th grade math teacher in Germany or in France or in Italy. The interesting thing about doing it this way is that at the end, when you create a skill, that skill will be able to create an assistant professor for philosophy or for chemistry or for, I don't know, psychology, if you provide them with the right input. So it can become generalized, and that's a very important thing when you are thinking about a skill. Not something that does something specific, really closed in scope, but a skill that actually can solve a problem when you present it with the specific data that it should use to solve the problem. So, how did I start this one? Basically, I don't know if you can see what the letters that are written, if it's big enough, or should I make it bigger? Bigger. Okay, so how do I make it bigger? Oh, that's a challenge. How do I make the letters bigger? Let me see if I can. I cannot find a way to make letters bigger.
It's readable, but ideally it would be bigger. But it's fine. Don't worry about it. Honestly.
Let me just see if I have something obvious here. No, I don't have anything obvious. So basically, what I started in Cowork, my Cowork session. So I started. So here you have Copilot with all the agents and all those things. And if you are using the last version of Copilot, you have this tab over here on top, which says Cowork. So you click Cowork and you get into the Cowork environment. Okay. And here, let me just go up. Here on the left, it's basically all the tasks that I started with Copilot Cowork, right? And I created a new task, clicking new task, and I started here with this question, right? So I'm a 10th grade math teacher. I want to create a knowledge base for an agent, because this is also a very important thing. sometimes when we are creating AI agents using Copilot Studio or Agent Builder or whatever, we get frustrated at the end with the results. And I would say that my experience is 90% of the times that we get frustrated is because we don't have the right knowledge base for the agent. So AI is not magic, right? AI is not, a metaphysical event, right? It's science, which means that it does have a set of capabilities, namely one that almost looks like magic, which is understanding the intent of what we are asking, but then it will reason on data, right? And that data for an agent, and we'll see it later when we create the agent, that data is the knowledge base. Right. So if we want to build something that has a purpose, in this case, an assistant professor, meaning a student tutor for your class, you need to start there. Right. I want to create a knowledge base to fit it into an agent. So that's what I'm asking. I'm starting the conversation there. I'm a 10th grade math teacher. I want to create a knowledge base for an agent to help my students study. I'm telling it should use the Socratic method of teaching. I don't want this agent to provide direct answers. I want the agent to explain the concepts, and then based on the concepts, probe the student to see if the student understood. And I'm asking, how should I approach it, right? And then one very interesting thing about Copilot Cowork is that when we make a question to Copilot Cowork, it has this tabs over here, which is a thought process. And it's amazing because this is supposedly the dialogue. So imagine that you are talking with another person, not with an AI, right? You are talking with that person, and that person is thinking, right? How should I approach it, right? So it basically gives you exactly how is the agent approach it, and that gives you information also to continue the dialogue. So basically what Copilot Cowork in this case, based on this question, said, okay, it's a great project, and then it goes search for information in valid sources of information. In my case, the Portuguese Ministry of Education publishes a student profile per year and publishes also learning objectives per subject per year, right? So it found them, and it basically explaining me what it got from my question, okay? Explaining me how is it going to guarantee that the agent behaves in a Socratic manner, blah, blah. And then he's asking me, I found 3 different math curriculum in the ministry side: Mathematics A, Mathematics B, and Mathematics CS, which is for social studies, okay? So he's asking me which one do I want. I want to go and select, okay, I want to go Mathematics A, okay? So, and then he's asking me, what do you want to build? Do you want to build just the tutor, meaning just the knowledge base for the tutor specifically, or do you also want to build student material? So he's helping me think about what should be the output of this conversation that we are having right now, okay? So I'm going to just say, I just want to do the tutor, okay? Then it goes in thinking. Right now he's just thinking, grabbing the information, explain me exactly how he's planning to do the stuff, and now is growing through the process. And actually, is going through the decision-making process. It's very interesting to look at it as it is going through, because it is adding more information. In my case, it's saying, okay, I just found one thing over here that can be useful. Maybe we should probe that we are using the right Portuguese language format, which in Portuguese for students is A90. It's kind of a norm. So it's adding stuff to the process, right? It's adding its own research and its own knowledge to solve the problem that I got. Now, he's saying, the one prerequisite is these 2 files. Aprendizagem Essenciais de Matemática, which is the curriculum published by the Ministry of Education, and the student profile, which is actually also published by the Ministry of Education. And basically, it opened, as you see over here on the right, it opened this tab, which is really cool, which basically lays out the execution plan. Okay, so this is what I'm planning to do. and then is saying that he won't make up any contact, and he's checking if I uploaded these files, right? The Aprendizagens Essenciais for Matemática A, which is the curriculum, and the student profile, okay? Searched, it's looking for if I uploaded them. Once I didn't upload them, he says, okay, I found them in the official website, blah, blah, and he's picking those files for me, right? So it's kind of, in reality, it's co-working with me to get all the information that it needs to create this knowledge base and then to generate the agents, okay? So it's telling me it found this information, blah, blah, and then actually is detecting this important thing, which is very, very powerful. There are two, right? There's an old one that was published in 2018 in the ministry website, and there's a new one. So what do you want to use? I'm going to say I want to use this new one, which is the one that has in force now, right? So see how it's actually behaving as a coworker. It's not only doing what I tell him to do. It's actually, going above what I told him to do, and is doing work for me, but always guaranteeing that it asks me in the critical moments, what do you think? What should I do? He's not making any critical decisions. He's doing research, he's investigating, he's looking in the web, he's validating information. But whenever he says, okay, this is a critical step, in my case, I'm building a tutor. One critical step is the curriculum document, right? The curriculum document, because that's the key component to build the tutor. So showed me kind of the gate for me to make a decision. I made a decision, and then basically now is building the knowledge base. I don't know if you read through over here, maybe you didn't read through, but when you are doing this yourself, it's really cool if you read through the process of thinking of the co-work skills, right? But in this process of thinking, if you read it through, at some point he said, to be a Socratic teacher, I need to understand the knowledge architecture. So it's not only about having the information about the concepts. I need to understand that, I don't know, before teaching a second degree equations, I need to teach first degree equations. And before teaching whatever, I need to teach whatever, so that he understands the sequence, right? Because that's what is going to make him effective in teaching a student. Not only replying questions to the student, but actually teaching the student a specific concept in which the student has a concern or a doubt. In the process, and this is also a very important thing, you can also add at some point, and we will get there, when it generates the knowledge base, you as a teacher, you can go to the knowledge base, which is basically a set of Word documents, and influence those documents and say, no, in this chapter, I have these 3, exam books, exercises that I built. I want you to consider them also. I have these slide decks that I built for my class. I want to consider that also. And by the way, I want you also to incorporate this and this behavior, like explaining how you like to do stuff, how you think it's more effective to teach. So you can include that in the knowledge base, so that this student tutor is actually as close as possible to the way that you think is the most effective to teach a specific concept. So you have the ability to influence. So the trade-off here is you have to make a little bit of investment in creating this thing, but what you gain after that is the moment that you create this capability for your students, supposedly you are kind of becoming ubiquitous in the sense that when the class ends, if the student needs you, each student needs you to clarify a doubt or didn't understand the concept or whatever, you have an extension that is available through Copilot or through the internet or through Teams. We will get to that. That can, extend you beyond the class, okay? Always behaving like a teacher, the way that you think it should be the teacher should behave, and teaching the concepts in the way that it makes sense for a 10th grade, okay? So now what it is saying now, it says that it has a sourcing constraint, and it is asking me to upload the AE files. meaning the curriculum files, because he couldn't get all the information that he needed. So he's asking me to upload the files. So I said, okay, I will upload the files. I have it here baked. I just downloaded them from the ministry website. Just give me a second. I have them here, AI school. And then I'll go to this file, which has these files. I downloaded them from the ministry. In your countries, you should have them also. History, mathematics A. So I'm going to upload mathematics A to the work space. You see, it came up here. So it's a reference for the work that we are doing together. Uploaded the files, and then he's telling me which are the chapters that he's identifying, and he's proposing what he will be doing. Okay, extracting the skeleton for the curriculum, which is that knowledge tree for math 10th grade, and here you have it. Okay. So it will grab this document that I uploaded because it told me over here, I'm not, totally right if this is the right document. So please guarantee it's the right curriculum to confirm. It is explaining me now what is it going to do and how is it going to do. These are the chapters that I'm identifying, and this is the moment that you as a teacher can go and say, no, I don't want to separate synthetic geometry from statistics. I want that to be all in one chapter. So this is where you as a teacher can kind of modulate the way that is looking at the curriculum. Now he's reading and he's thinking, okay? So it's interesting to go through and understand what he's doing because he's kind of reasoning about that. And at the end of this process, we can jump some steps if, I don't know, we are good on time still. And then I can show you kind of a more developed version of this. It's confirming it's the right document. It's stated in the date that it says it's the last one that is done. It has a new chapter because what it detected was, I see in the legislation, if you go up and say, I see in the legislation that there's a new chapter in mathematics for 10th grade, which is mathematics for citizenship. That frames basically stuff like electoral voting systems and democratic models and stuff like that, mapping that to mathematics. And he was not finding it in the document. So he said, I see this in legislation. I'm not seeing it in the document. Can you please share the right document? Because I may be not getting into the right document. That's when I uploaded this official mathematics curriculum and he's confirming, yeah, that's the right document. Okay, with mathematics for citizenship framing, electoral statistics, blah, 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 blah. So it's kind of helping me through the process, which is interesting around co-work, is that it's actually a co-worker for you. He's thinking with you. He's bringing up stuff that are relevant, asking you for the right decisions to build the right thing, blah, blah. So he's mapping the document, creating that knowledge structure. And here is for one of those examples in which me as a teacher, I may know exactly what I need to do, but I don't have the right skills. So what he's building right now is something that I could never have built because I don't have the skills, which is building a JSON file. A JSON file is kind of a markup file with all the concepts that are needed and the tree of concepts with the sequence and relationship and the probes and the misconceptions and all that into this structured document. Why is it doing that? Because AI agents, when you think about building a knowledge base for an agent, it's not the same thing as building a document for a human, right? And agents are more effective with specific types of document in specific types of format. So he's taking that into consideration to create the knowledge base for the agent, right? And I could never have done that. The most that I could have done is grab these files and just put them in the knowledge base of the agent. Right? I couldn't have massaged them in a way that then the agent can consume them in a very effective way. Okay? And that's this co-work capability and this skills capability that co-work brings with it and that we can benefit from. Right? The same would apply. So we started the conversation with, I want to build a tutor for my students. Okay? because I want them to have an extension of me to clarify any doubt or concern that they have, or maybe even a student that couldn't come to last class. He missed last class because he was sick, right? He can get this class through the tutor. And it's not only getting kind of a set of slides that represent the class. No, actually, the tutor can explain the concepts as the teacher would explain the concepts in the classroom. So it allows you, of course, it's a substitute, right? It will never be the same thing. The experience in the classroom with the teacher is much better. Totally agree. But it's kind of a good substitute to kind of provide extra assistance for a student that, for example, couldn't come to a class, did miss a specific concept. Now, here is where he's explaining how he's building this knowledge base, is, creating specific gateways, creating these concepts of misconceptions in understanding. How do you probe, right? Because you can teach something, right? But then you need to probe, did the student understand, right? So that needs to be also in the agent knowledge base, not only the concepts, but how do you probe? How do you validate that the student actually understood this concept, right? So this is what he's building in this JSON file, which I could never read because, again, I don't have that skill, right? I cannot build JSON files and make them integral and with integrity and all that. So that's what he's doing right now. Right? From this JSON file that represents the knowledge, what he will do is he will create the word files that then have the specific detailed concepts that will be consumed by the agent, okay? I will let it continue, and I will show you another thing, because at the end, what this will generate, in this case, it's a SharePoint folder, okay? Where I already have a few subjects: biology, economy, philosophy, chemistry. I also have mathematics. It will create a structure like this, okay? With 7 folders. Okay, one folder is all the sources that it used to create the knowledge base. So why? Because this needs to be auditable, right? This needs to be like, you need to go and say, okay, the knowledge base was created based on what, right? So, and once this is a co-work exercise, it brings in everything that is searched and everything that I approve, like exams. That's important to get, references to create exercises for students to practice, marking schemes, solutions for the exams, textbooks, all those kind of things that you can bring up as sources for your agent, for not really for the agent, because they are not direct sources for the agent. They are sources for the knowledge base. Then you have the knowledge base itself, okay? Which, as I told you, is a JSON file, okay? Just to show you through the structure, it's interesting to go through it. It has base, so as you see, it's a markup file. So it's a structure file, right? So it has the concepts, but then it has potential questions that it should make, what's expected as an answer. And this is where you, as a teacher, can also bring your things. It creates hints, metacognitive, conceptual, procedural, and work step hints to kind of help the student get there if the student didn't get there at first. It creates probes also, and this is based on what you will say, okay, the student understood this. Here is this probe, okay? It went through it, and it has basically that for all the concepts that come in the curriculum, okay? Another thing that it does, which I didn't mention, is it created class scripts, okay? So that if a student missed a specific class, he can go and listen to that class. And again, this is something where the teacher can kind of influence and say, no, I have my own class scripts, I'm going to upload them, and that's it, right? So you have a clear kind of mapping in between your teaching strategy and the agent that you are providing to your student, okay? Let me go to the other one. So this folder is knowledge base, and this folder over here is, whenever this loads, is the agent, okay, which is the most interesting thing. Because based on that JSON file, it creates these doc files, again, which you can edit if you want. These are human readable files that are kind of formatted and conceptually built for an agent to read them in a very effective manner, but they are editable and they are human readable. So you can go to these files at the end and basically change stuff, because here is explaining how is he teaching, which are the concepts per chapter, blah, blah. So you can go and change stuff over here as a teacher, inputting your own perspective on, how this thing should be done, okay? And it creates another thing, which is very, very relevant and very, very important. It creates a knowledge base, and it creates this magic file over here, which is how to create the agent, right? So you as a teacher, you did all the hard work, right? You laid the concepts, you worked with co-work to build the assets, to build the knowledge base. You even introduced, tweaked, changed stuff because you think it's more relevant. Maybe you changed, the chapter structure because you think it's more relevant. Or maybe you said, no, I don't want it to teach functions. I just wanted to teach trigonometry because trigonometry is the key thing that my students struggle more. So you as a teacher, you could influence all that. In the behavioral part, you could always also include things that you think are important. Things like, I don't know, if you want your agent to have a sense of humor, you can just say, hey, I want my agent to have a sense of humor. Or if you want your agent to map every concept to a day-to-day reality, you can say, hey, whenever you are explaining a concept, map that to something that is visible somewhere. Let me just share you a note. When I was building this, actually, I learned something from this agent, this math agent, about the theorem of Pythagoras, which is that actually, GPS systems without Pythagoras would be much slower, right? Because Pythagoras invented this really easy way to calculate the distance between 2 points, right? That are not in the same, like 2 points, you give them 2 points, and it gets the hypotenuse, right? It gets the distance between them. And that's key for GPS systems. Why? Because computationally, the theorem of Pythagoras is, easy peasy for a computer, right? Easier than anything else, right? And all of a sudden I learned this. Why? Because in the tutor, I configured, I want you to do that. I want you to map every concept to something that in reality makes sense. And of course, when you say that, you as a teacher can go and say, and validate, you know what I mean? You can go and confirm the examples that he's giving and all that, so that you guarantee that it is happening. So this file basically is a configuration guide, right? How do you create the agents? Which are the knowledge base that you need to upload? How do you create a topic? So everything step by step. So even a person with very low knowledge on Copilot Studio can follow these steps, and at the end, you have the agent built, okay? So it not only, if you think about it, now let's go through the full process. It not only helps you think about it, understands your intent, works with you to create the best plan to get to where you want to go, opens this needed space for you to make the key decisions so that you are always kind of leading the process. And at the end, and just at some point in this one that we are executing live, I will ask it. I asked it, hey, create a configuration file to turn this work that we did into a Copilot Studio agent, right? And then we go to why is it important to turn it into an agent? Now, in each phase it's it, okay? He already identified all the concepts. And this, again, is where you as a teacher can go and say, yeah, I don't agree that much. I think blah, blah. So basically here he identified the concepts in 3 depth level. T1 is the most depth, T2 a little bit shallower, T3 a little bit shallower. And what is telling me which are the concepts. And this is where you as a teacher can go and say, oh no, I think that statistic problems is not a T2 thing, it's a T3, so we need to go deeper on that. So this is where you as a teacher can influence, or, which I'm going to do because we don't have that much time to go through all that process, just to tell you that you can go through that process. I'm going to say, okay, build all the concepts. So I agree with your proposal. I agree how you are splitting it in chapters. I agree which concepts you are proposing for each chapter. If you don't agree, you can say, and it changes. And then you can go build the concept. So basically what's empowering in my perspective here is that it's a peer that acknowledges that it doesn't know enough to make the critical decisions, always keeps you at the helm of execution. But actually, when that button that you clicked is the repeatable, time-consuming work, right? When you said, okay, create the content for the 48 concepts, is the repeatable work of creating that content based on the curriculum that is there, right? So it's basically doing the hard work, allowing you to make the decisions. And when he finishes building it, you can take a look at it and say, yeah, I don't agree with this thing over here. We need to rewrite this. Over there, we need more examples. Over there, I don't agree with the probes. Here, blah, blah, and it rebuilds it. And it does kind of the repeatable hard work of editing and putting it in the right structure for the agent to understand, blah, 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 blah. Okay, but it always keeps me at the helm. It's telling me, okay, this is going to take a little bit of time because it's 57 concepts. I'll try to do this in parallel, but this will take some time. And now he's explaining exactly what he's doing, blah, blah, blah. So it keeps on executing. Now, how do you create the agent? Okay, as you saw, we have this amazing thing, which is this file that it generates at some point. And it generated because I asked it at some point, hopefully we will get there. I asked it, generate a markup file explaining a person that doesn't know anything about Copilot Studio, how to create the agent based on the knowledge base that we just created and on the prompt, the Socratic ladders and all that. It created this document over here. Now, how do I create the agent? Just give me a thumbs up if you have Copilot Studio also. If in your Copilot subscription, if you have Copilot Studio. Okay. You don't have Copilot Studio. I don't see any thumbs up or everyone left. I don't know. Okay, we have some thumbs up, which is cool. But anyway, Copilot Studio is pretty user-friendly, right? So this is Copilot Studio over here. Again, everything that you are going to see here is described in that MD file that Cowork generated for me, okay? And why is it important, before going to that, why is it important after I do all this work, why is it important to create an agent? Because the moment I create an agent, I can distribute the agent, meaning I can easily provide access to the agent to my students, right? And if your school uses our productivity platform, as you will see, I will show you, you can publish the agent as, between commas, a person in Teams, right? So all of a sudden, if your students use Teams in the classroom or in your school, they just see, I named it, in my case, Pythagoras. They just see another person there, which is Pythagoras. But, you know, it can be an other name like math tutor or whatever, and they can use it, right? They can use it immediately, right? So you have, the moment you build an agent, you have a very powerful distribution process, right? Or you can also publish it in Copilot if your students have Copilot chat, right? So that's why building agents, the moment you solve a problem, that's why building agents is so useful in what concerns distribution. So let's go to Pythagoras, which is this agent. And I will guide you through the process. It's already configured, but I will guide you through the process. At the end, I will share with you the agent pack for the math teacher, so that if you want, you can just build it yourself afterwards, okay? Using that guide and that process built. Let's just see how is the meal cooking. Let's see in which phase our cowork stage is. Let's just see, it's over here. Okay, it's generating the knowledge base. It's still didn't end. He warned me. He said, okay, this is going to take some time because it's 57 concepts. I need to take care of them. Let's go to the other page over here. Copilot Studio. Why isn't Copilot Studio loading? The live demo gods are playing a trick on us. Let's see. Agents, okay, we are progressing. Something is coming up. Pythagoras is selected, so eventually we will see Pythagoras coming up here on the right. Okay, cool. This is what you get as an interface in Copilot Studio. Of course, you could also have done this with Agent Builder in Copilot. I'm showing you this one because this is more it has more detail and it gives you more control on a few things. So first thing, it asks you for a description. This is basically something internal, and your MD file. Let me just open it again. You can check that information here. There's a chapter over here for description. Here is the description. You just copy and paste this into there, and you can edit it if you want. Okay. So you put the description over there. Then you choose the model that you want to use. And this is a very interesting thing because actually testing different models is interesting to see how the behavior of the agent changes based on the model, that meaning the brain that you put inside your agent. By experience, the one that is more effective in math in this specific agent I tested a few is either Sonnet 4.6 or GPT-5 Auto. Okay, those are the two ones that I felt that are more effective. Okay, then you have the instructions, right? The prompt, and this is where you are. So you have the model, which is GPT-5 that you pick, which is the brain of the agent, right? And here in the instructions is all the information, all the behavior information that the agent needs to take into consideration when he's interacting with a human, right? And basically, it explains stuff like the Socratic method, what's the ideal flow of a conversation in between a student and a teacher about a concept, how to connect different subjects inside the same year of school, which kind of notation should it use, because we are talking about mathematics and that's it. It's an extra challenge. Which things can it share, can it not share, which themes can he approach and cannot approach, which languages can he use, cannot use, all that information. And this is basically coming from here also, this magic MD file, which created based on the conversation that I had with Cowork, it created this prompt, right? I just copy this prompt into this area over here, which is the instructions for the agent using Copilot Studio. Of course, and again, you can and you should tweak it because you are the teacher. You know exactly what you want from that agent, right? And you can reinforce things, right? You can add exclusions. You can do whatever based on what's your experience. Then one very important piece, again, this file tells you exactly which are the files that you need to upload as a knowledge base. And that's what you do, pretty easy, right? Over here, knowledge, right? You click add knowledge, and you basically grab the files and drop them here, which is something that I already did. Just drop the files here. And after you drop the files, you will see, now you see all of them green ready, okay? When you drop them, they will be in processing. And what Copilot Studio is doing when they are still not ready, still being processed, is basically indexing all those files, okay? So that then in the conversation, the agent can access the information really quickly, really effectively, and really accurately, okay? And that's why it is important that these files, which are the knowledge base that I'm providing the agent, are built assuming that the entity that will be using them is not a human, it's an agent, okay? And that's why it's so important that we build this knowledge base, having that in consideration, okay? Then, once my agent is a tutor that I want to explain math 10 grades, and I don't want it to make up anything, I'm saying you don't have access to the internet, right? Your knowledge source is this knowledge base. You don't go make up things that you see in the internet somewhere, right? And this is where you put disable over here, okay? Then, in this case, this agent is not using any of these tools, but you could add tools, right? You could add tools to the agent. For example, if you'd want your agent to send an email after every interactions to the student with kind of a summary of the interaction and suggestions for the student to study further, blah, blah, you could add, for example, Outlook over here and create a topic to address that, right? So you could do stuff, more stuff over here. In this case, I'm not doing them, but you could. The triggers area is an area where you can wake up the agent, okay? You can wake up the agent proactively. So right now, the agent as it is built, is waiting for the student to do something, to ask a question, okay? It's not doing anything. It doesn't have agency in the sense that it doesn't wake up itself to do stuff, right? But you, for example, the teacher, maybe, you want to create a trigger, which is, I don't know, 5 hours after class, just send a message to the student saying, hey, we had this class today. These were the concepts that we studied. Do you have any doubt that I can help you with? Okay, maybe you want that. And if you want that, you can configure a trigger that actually does that, right? And you have this proactive behavior from the agent and not a reactive behavior from the agent. Here in this area is an area where you could, if you wanted, get this agent connecting with other agents. For example, if you didn't build a tutor, imagine you didn't build a tutor, you built in that conversation with cowork, you built, I don't know, an exam preparator, okay? An agent that is totally specialized in creating exam simulations for the student to run through. Imagine that you do that. If you do that in cowork, he would not ask you for, of course, cowork would ask you for the curriculum and all that, but he would ask you for exams, previous exams, other exercises. He would ask you for that so that he could build the knowledge base, so that he could be really good at, making up potential exam simulations for the student. So if you had built that agent in this area over here, you could go and connect that agent to this one. What would that mean? If the student in that conversation with the agent would say, I have my final exam in 2 weeks, please create an exam simulation for 90 minutes covering all the subjects. What your agent would do would be calling that other agent that you built to create the exam simulation, because there's a specialized agent. So you can basically create a mesh of agents that connect with each other, each one specialized. Once we didn't build it, I'm not going to add anyone, but basically here you just click add agent. And if you add any other agents, which will come up here, for example, I have Merlin, which is the chemistry agent. And I have this practicals teacher. If I thought that this could make sense, I could connect Merlin to Pythagoras, and I don't know what would happen, because math and chemistry in this sense, I don't see the connection. But you could do that, like connect the agents, and they would collaborate whenever the query from the student would be better fitted to that other agent, right? So that's basically how you start creating a mesh, right? Just to give you an example, we have done this with a university for a specific medicine course. And they built a tutor. Once the depth of knowledge is very, very big, they just created for specific concepts. They didn't create it for a subject. They created for concepts like anatomy, pathology, that's the way that they approached it. But then they created a role player. What is a role player? Is actually an agent that is a clinical case, right? And then the student can actually have a conversation with the patient. And the patient comes and says, I'm feeling a headache, my back is hurting. And the objective of that role play agent is basically understand if the student is making the right questions to make a good diagnosis with a human, right? And is allowing the student to practice those questions. So basically the knowledge base for that role play agent are clinical cases, right? That have all the information about the symptoms, all the information about the, I don't know, exams and tests that the patient did, and the real diagnosis, right? So that's another example. So I don't know, for example, in philosophy, you could get a role play agent to have a conversation with a student. Now, here topics, I'm going to jump through these ones because they don't make sense for our purpose. And then the suggested prompts. Which are the suggested prompts? Are when the agent appears to the student, there are a few things that are kind of shortcuts, like I want to recover the next class, or I want to explore this specific thing, or I want to do some exercise, right? Some kind of initial starting points, like shortcuts for the student to make the student's life easier. Okay, so after you've done this, essentially you created the agent. It's done. Okay? You have to wait a little bit until all these things come green, but it's basically done. You have your agent created. Now, a few other things that are important. Let me run you through. So here is the knowledge area. You saw it in the previous page, but here you have more detail. Okay? Here are the tools area, right? Which the only ones that I have is WorkIQ, which basically provides context. Then you have the agents area, which, as you saw, we didn't connect any agent, didn't make sense. You have the topics. Which are the topics? What is a topic? If you want your agent to have a predefined behavior, when the student asks a specific thing, you can create a topic. Okay? For example, I created a topic for Pythagoras, which is recover a class. Whenever a student says, I want to recover a class, I missed last class, I want to recover it. Right? And this specific topic basically is pointing the agent directly with any further thinking to those files that I showed you that have the transcript of the class. Okay? So that whenever a student says, I want to recover the class, actually, it's not the agent trying to, explain the concepts that were taught in the class. It's the actual transcript of the class that the agent is going to provide to the student. Okay, and that transcript can be in text, but it can also be in video with an avatar, just teaching and speaking on that script and all that. So that's what you do with a topic. You kind of hard code the behavior. Whenever you really want the behavior to be that, you create a topic and say, okay, this is what I want to do. Okay, recover a class. Topics, activity. This is where supposedly you go see what is happening with your agent, right? The people that are using your agent, when they use your agent, how much time did they take? Was it successful? Is it still an open conversation? What was the last step? So it's kind of monitoring information. And then there's a very important thing, which is evaluation. You create your agent, you create your knowledge base with cohort, do all that stuff. But then you want to evaluate it, right? So you are a teacher, you create a set of questions with the right answers, and you just evaluate the agent. And you basically what it does is run the tests that you created, which are basically questions with the right answer, and it runs it, and to tell you if is the agent being effective in providing the answers to those questions. Then you have a tab for analytics, which basically tells you more information about the usage of your agent, which can be also interesting, and it also tells you how much is it costing you, the agent, okay? Which in this case doesn't apply because we are doing it with Copilot Studio, but it gives you kind of analytics information about not only the usage of the agent, but also the knowledge base consumption, right? So which are the items of the knowledge base that are being more consumed by the agent, which can also give you some insight on the areas that are more demanded by the students, what concerns knowledge validation and all of those things. That's just okay. Yes, we have it. Okay, so this is the engagement, how many sessions happened in the last 7 days. Then the knowledge source use, the tool used. In our case, we don't have tool use because we don't have tools associated, and the quality of generated answers. Once we don't have almost any users because I've not been using it lately, you don't see any information, but you will see here, right? And he gets this information over here based on the test set that you create for the agent. Okay, so that's basically it. And then the channels, and this is where you created the agent. Let's backtrack before I went through these specific topics over here: knowledge tools, agents, activity evaluation, analytics, channels. This is where you, after you do all that work of creating, putting the knowledge base in and all that, this is where you distribute the agent. That's where you say, okay, I want to put it available in Copilot Studio, Teams, or both. Okay, and that's basically it. So you can edit some details. You can add kind of an icon and all that. And the moment you do this, what happens is the agent, let me show you my Teams, comes up in Teams. Let me see, give me a second. Quite a slow internet today, I'm sorry. It comes in like this. Okay, so for some reason, maybe I need to republish Pythagoras, but you have this solar car Socratic tutor, which is another agent. It appears like that. Okay, so as if it was another person in Teams that your students can interact with. Okay, this is basically why it is important to create an agent based on all that work that you did with Codework. Is because after you create an agent, you can not only monitor the usage of the agent by your students, but you can also have a very good way to distribute it, to make it accessible to the students, basically. This is how easy, let's put it like that, it is. Basically, you just pick, you click the channels, you just pick which one, save changes, and a few minutes after it's published. Maybe you need to wait a few minutes for it to do the publishing. As you can see here, there are many other options to publish an agent, okay? Inside Microsoft, these are the only ones that I have available. But you could publish the agent in a website, meaning it would be a website where people could use the interface with the agent. You can publish it in a SharePoint, in a web app. So there are many other stuff. One interesting is you can actually publish it also in WhatsApp, right? So people can use the agent in WhatsApp in the move in their mobile phone, right? And it's pretty easy, pretty kind of interesting. Let's go to the final step of this, which goes into more detail, just to give you a notion on the control that you have as someone that is creating one of these things. As you can see here, you have a lot of options. Let's go through a few things that I think are the most relevant. On one side, the orchestration. Responsive will be dynamic, using available tools and knowledge as appropriate. So what are we saying here? We are saying here is that we actually want our agent to be intelligent. We don't want it to be dumb in the sense that it doesn't only replies the way that I wrote it should be. I want it to be able to use its own reasoning to build the answers in a way that makes more sense for that interaction context specifically. But I want you to do that only using the knowledge base that I provided you. Okay, so you don't go beyond that. You don't go to the internet, but I want it to be intelligence on top of that. Content moderation. Okay, you can go low, medium, or high. Content moderation is how sensitive is the agent to harmful content, stupid prompts by the user, and all that. Okay, the low is already amazing. The high is very restricted. Okay, so you can pick the moderation level. Okay, and you can also say things like, I want, whenever an interaction ends, I want to give the user the possibility to give me a thumbs up on the interaction or give me a thumbs down on the interaction. I added disconnected. I'm going to connect it. And basically, the change is the agent, after each interaction, will put a symbol so that I can say, this was cool, this is not cool, which is also good feedback and insight on how effective the agent is, executing. Agent details, basic stuff, as you saw, the name, the icon, and all that. Then some security capabilities on authentication and all that. I'm not using any kind of authentication because I'm not using any ID for the student. So this, for us, is totally anonymous. So we don't know which student gave the answer. If you wanted that to know first student information, if that is possible in your compliance environment in your school, you just turn on authentication, right? And the moment you turn on authentication, all the conversations come associated with an ID of the user. In this case, the Office 365 user ID, okay? This is where you configure the connected agents. We already saw that. And then there's another interesting thing, and I will close with this one, which is we created an agent, right? Now, and we created an agent how? We worked with CoWork to create a knowledge base, explain CoWork exactly what's the intent of the agent, and he created that MD file with the prompt and with the description and with all the instructions for me to create the agent. And then I went to Copilot Studio and we did it right now, created the agent, right? Now, if you remember in the beginning of the conversation, we talked about the ability that Copilot CoWork has of creating skills, okay? Creating a skill, which is basically what we are using to build. Okay. Okay, so it finished. Okay, cool. So while we were talking, the thing finished, and see what it produced. It produced the MD file, the one that you saw, okay? It produced all the knowledge base files, which are these docx files, and it created that JSON file, which is basically the reference from which all the other files are created, okay? Now, if I wanted to create an agent that allowed all of my colleagues in my school to do this, okay? What I would do now is create a skill based on the work that we have done. And Copilot CoWork would create a skill based on this work. And then I could go to Copilot Studio and create a shallow, not a shallow, a shell agent, and then add that skill to the agent. What would I be doing? I would be grabbing that capability that I created with Copilot CoWork, which is generating knowledge bases for agents, and I would be turning it into an agent. And that would allow me to distribute that capability to all my colleagues in my school, so that all my colleagues in my school, if they want to create an agent for their class, they just can go and create it using this agent, right? They don't need to do all the hard work that I've done with CoWork to build it, right? They wouldn't need to go through this conversation and all that. This would be encapsulated as a skill, delivered into an agent, so that anyone could go to that agent and go and say, I want to create a knowledge base and an agent for, I don't know, chemistry, 11th grade, Portuguese curriculum, or Dutch curriculum, German curriculum, or Spanish curriculum. And the agent will do exactly what we are saying here, make the questions, but the kind of your colleague wouldn't need to go through this process that you went through, because he would be using the full formatted skill that you created in here, okay? That's basically the power of starting with CoWork, solving the problem, turning that solution into a skill, and then encapsulating it in an agent that can be distributed to customers. In this case, customers would be your colleagues in that teach other disciplines. At Microsoft, we don't have this activated with the agents that we build internally, which is we are used to interacting with these agents through chat. But if you enable voice, they interact through voice exactly the same way. So you could have a student asking questions and having a dialogue with voice. This is where you set which languages should the agent use, which is also very powerful, right? Because you do all this work of the knowledge base. In my case, in Portuguese. In your case, maybe if you are Spanish, you do it in Spanish or English or German or whatever. But actually, the agent can speak any language, regardless of in which language the knowledge base is. Where is this powerful? And this came up in a conversation with a group of schools here in Portugal. If you have, and at least in Portugal, it's a challenge, right? If you have foreign students in your class, like sons of immigrants, that maybe they still don't master the Portuguese language, right? And you have a class of 25 people, and maybe you have 4 students that don't master your native language, don't master English or German or Spanish or Portuguese in my case. Okay, they will need to go through the effort of studying Portuguese and learning Portuguese. But in the meanwhile, they can still learn chemistry and mathematics. Because you as a teacher, you have a support, like you have an extension that then your students can use at home, that actually if the student is Nepalese, the assistant professor will speak Nepalese. Or if the student is Ukrainian, it will speak Ukrainian, right? So you have this ability of kind of leveling the play field on the language barrier side through the agent, right? And that, of course, will help the student because it will help you as a teacher, I would say, because you will have supposedly a class that is ideally at the same level, right, of knowledge and ability to understand class. And will, again, level the play field for the different students also in terms of language barrier, if that language barrier, while that language barrier exists. Like ideally, after a few months, the student is already able to, understand and follow a class in the native language. But for sure, a teacher, like we cannot expect a teacher that knows how to speak Portuguese, French, German, Latin, Ukrainian, Nepalese, and Hindi, right? It's not possible, right? So these kind of tools also has that kind of consequence, okay? That's basically it. And that's it on my side. Just to summarize and put it all in a nutshell, please use AI to build AI, okay? That's a very important concept, right? And as our AI offers inside of Copilot, which the latest is, not even talking about Scout, but which the latest is co-work, use co-work to complement the skills that you don't have, right? Things that you don't know how to do, you know what you want to do, you know how it's done, but you don't know technically, functionally, how to do this task and this task and this task. Use co-work to do that. Use co-work to elaborate your thinking, right? To think about building the solution. And at the end, when you find the solution to the problem that you want to solve, just tell it, I need a knowledge base and I need a guide to create the agent in Copilot Studio. And at the end, you will get those two things, the knowledge base for your agent and a guide to create. Even if you are not the one creating the agent, you can give your IT in your school, hey, here is the guide to create the agent. I want this to be available to my class in Teams, a 10th grade people, right? And then IT can go through the guide, put the agent in, right? And you are always in control. You are building not a generic thing for math, you are building your extension to teach math, to help your students perform better, and to help you, of course, to be used outside of class. And the enterprise consequence to this is all that data that is flowing out of your purview as a teacher and as a school, which is the data of the interactions that your students make every day after class with Gemini and with Grok and with whatever, because they didn't get something, they didn't understand the concept. All that data will feed back to you, will not be lost, in a tool that is a commercial tool that you don't manage, you don't know. That information will feed back to you as insight about your students, about their learning process, about their difficulties. And right now, all of that is flowing to Google and to X and to Grok and to, is flowing to the tools that they are using, right? Because they don't have a tool provided by the school to help them through the process, right? So that is it. Carl, was this too much?
No, it was fantastic. Thank you. It was really, really, really fascinating. And that last piece was particularly interesting because I can imagine students at home trying to do their homework and the parents can't handle it because, whatever, particularly if it's English, it's not the first language, and which was a fantastic piece there as well. To have essentially a homework assistant which you are managing and you have grounded the knowledge base within your syllabus, within your data, and you're not relying on a random piece of AI somewhere else, which may be looking at the American syllabus or the British syllabus or whatever, is a really fantastic way. And one of the other pieces which I really loved about this was how you have this audibility, so you can actually effectively open the black box, which is AI, and see what it is using to give the answers and making sure that it is using the right data to give the answers, to give the support. Those are absolutely invaluable within the education facilities because you're not just, asking a random thing, tell me about Pythagoras. You're saying, based on this knowledge, based on this information, teach me about this, which within the school setting, within the educational setting, within exam settings and so forth is great. And the piece about the exams element was also fascinating because that revision for exams, supporting for exams and so on, was really, really invaluable. And I absolutely was enthralled all the way through. So thank you so much. Does anyone else have any questions? I know we have run over, and I apologize for those people who had to leave. This will obviously be recorded so that you'll be able to catch up later. Does anyone have any questions for Yao as we're speaking now?
No, thank you very much. It was very useful, and I learned a lot about the potential of using AI agents in support to teaching activities.
Thank you, Joaquin.
And I must say, you were incredibly brave doing this live and not just doing pre-made slides. The bravery there was quite extraordinary. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it went well.
We have run over. I'm going to close now. Obviously, if anyone has any questions, I will be sharing this video with you, and we'll be providing links also for any further follow-up questions afterwards. But thank you all, particularly thank you, Yao. Thank you very much, Sandra, for organising and arranging this. And I look forward to seeing you all again. Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye. Thank you, Carl.